Final words on Reflex Lab. You know, we kind of ran out of time again last time, so I wanted to make sure, I kind of leave you in a place where you have a sense of what the expectations are and all that, and kind of the take-home messages for this Reflex Lab. So let's look at that first. I'm going to open up the module. All right, so doing the Reflex Lab. So the first part we've talked a bunch about. That was part one, that was Jendrassik's maneuver. Part two is the part that we were talking about again last class. You are not going to be required to do these reflexes on a person, although you can try if you want, but you still are required to describe what you see in the video. So for the different parts of the lab in part two, where it normally says like, do this on your partner and describe it and talk about it a bit, you'll watch the little video. You'll see.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah, registered nurse RN.
Oh, it's Sarah, and she'll tell you all about. Oh my God, she's a little animated.
I'm going to go over the basics about this reflex, and then
so she's going to tell you about it, and she'll do it. One of the things I don't really like about the video is it's clear that there's a bit of acting involved, because she'll do it and you get a normal response, and she'll do it and you'll get the abnormal response. So obviously the person is not actually got a damaged motor system. He's just kind of making his toes go out to, for the film. But still, describe what a normal response looks like based on this. Describe kind of why people do it, what an abnormal response would be, and what that means. If you haven't already, and some people might have just finished writing all this up already. If you're doing this at home on just your friends, loved ones, kids, whatever, I'll just warn you, it can be a tricky one to actually get right. It's one where I'd say like 70% of the time when I try to make it happens pretty well. But then it can be a tricky one. I think if you go to med school and have to keep practicing and learn the subtleties, you probably get better. But if you do it at home and you're having trouble making it work just right, that's not uncommon. Corneal reflex, again, just watch the video and describe what you see.
I'm now checking for the corneal reflex, testing cranial nerve 5. For me, please.
Okay. Yeah.
And you will look for a blink response when you touch the wisp to the eye.
Right, so you saw that, and we've talked about it. But, describe what you see, and again, why that's important. And again, this is something you can do at home as well with somebody. If you're doing it at home, use a cotton wisp. You don't want to actually poke them in the eye with something hard. Poke them with something that's not going to actually hurt them. And also, when you kind of come in, you want to don't make them see it, right? Because otherwise they're going to blink just because they see something coming at their face. So just kind of come in like from the side and touch. And the cornea, again, is the clear part, the kind of window where you kind of go in, like basically the pupil. Pupillary light and consensual reflex. Again, this is really important that you understand the response and what the consensual response is. I did not find any videos that really showed it that well on an actual human, partly because it's hard getting good contrast between the pupil and the iris. This little thing uses these little fake eyes, kind of showing kind of what happens. Here the arrow is supposed to be a little light, and it's kind of showing the pupils getting smaller and bigger. So, pretend this is real and describe what you see again both the ipsilateral as well as the contralateral eye that are experiencing the light. He talks about this RAPD. Don't worry about that. He spends a lot of time talking about it. That's not something you are responsible for. You need to know for this class. I just use this video because it seemed to be the best one that really clearly showed the response for the pupillary light reflex. And this is easier on like when you have lighter irises. If you have like kind of a dark iris, kind of the dark brown eyes, they might be really pretty, but they're going to be really hard to see small changes in the pupillary size. Whereas if you have kind of like a icy blue, it's going to be way easier to see. So I'll say that how easy or difficult it is to actually see the pupil change size often depends on the color of your eyes. Ciliospinal, again, she like.
Hello and welcome to Online Anatomy. Today we're going to be talking about the ciliospinal.
She talks about it.
Sympathetic innervation, the sympathetic between
and
the ipsilateral.
Make sure you understand what it is. Try it. Look in the mirror. And I write here, look in the mirror. And it's going to be like pinching. You want to have some kind of like, whoa, right? It's because it's a sympathetic response. So it's a reaction to some kind of like, ooh, right? It's the fight or flight. So you kind of want to scratch or pinch. But like I said, this one's tricky to see. It's kind of subtle. So don't expect some like, woo, woo. If you do notice anything, it's going to be more subtle. Record what you notice, whether or not you could record like I tried it, I didn't see anything, but a typical response would be blah, 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 right? So, you're in your lab notebook, you don't want to make it up. Don't say, well, I saw this because that's what he wants me to write because that's what I was supposed to see. You're not going to be wrong for saying what I saw is nothing, as long as you actually tried to do it properly. But then you should also continue on and say what you would have expected to see and all that. So ciliospinal. So these are the ones we did in our little Zoom rooms. The static equilibrium video where we saw, again, what were some of your conclusions from doing that little thing in the last 10 minutes of lab on Tuesday?
That they swayed a lot more when their eyes were closed.
Yeah, so vision is going to be an important part of your balance, even though that might not be the first place you go when you think about what are important senses for balance. It's like seeing the world tipping over is actually useful information that you're tipping over. So nystagmus, I tried to show you on the screen. I kind of looked back when I was editing. You did see a little bit of jittering and flickering of my eyes. You can also, again, I wrote goofy nystagmus video because this guy's kind of goofy, but you can still see his eyes go.
Okay, now. Look,
Okay,
look,
come here. Look here. Open your eyes.
Look.
It's not doing anything.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Oh, man.
It's good.
Right, so it's kind of goofy, but you can actually see. Like a nystagmus will happen whenever your equilibrium senses in your skull, those little semicircular canals, tell your brain you're spinning because there's residual motion of the fluid, or sometimes it could be some inflammation like labyrinthitis we'll talk about, where there's just pressure on those little hair cells. So the brain is getting this message that you are turning your head, even if you're not, in which case you get, it actually can be really, really debilitating. People are constantly feeling kind of nauseous and car sick, just kind of sitting there because in some level their head is saying I'm turning, but their eyes are saying I'm not. So nystagmus, though, is something people check. And again, it's a reflex that is helping you stare straight ahead, maintain your gaze, right? Because if I'm staring straight ahead and my head is turning, then my eyes have to turn in a relative opposite direction. So my eyes keep staring at the thing like I did last time, you know, right? You just, if I turn my head one way, the eyes have to, you know, rotate the opposite direction of my head. Otherwise, I'm going to lose contact with my item of visual fixation. Gag reflex. Again, you don't have to do this at home. If you want to, you can. Put a little, you know, but basically you should describe what you see in the video and, you know, talk about, you know, why it's useful to do, right? The doc isn't just doing this like, made the person gag, right? They're actually getting information about kind of whether or not their, you know, nervous system is healthy or not, in particular, certain cranial nerves and all that. So, you know, so that's what this part 2 is going to be about. Even though, you know, you're not going to have to do the different reflexes. If you have somebody lying around that you want to mess around with, you know, definitely it's more fun to actually do it on somebody. But even if you don't, you should definitely, you're still responsible for knowing what the reflex is like, what a typical response is, writing a little bit about what it means. And you can get that off of these videos. So and actually I should now, I don't think I published this. I'm going to now publish this submit PDF of Reflex Lab because I finally finished talking about it. So I'm publishing it, and what is, yeah, and instead of, let's change the due date on it. I have it due on March 15th, which is 2 days from now. So what is like today's, let's just make it due like 2 weeks from now. It would be the 2014, so like 25th or something. I'll change it later. But so yeah, that will be ready for you, and it'll be due like in a couple of weeks.